Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rover Metals live corporate webinar. This is David Vidala from RBMG. Rover Metals is listed on the TSX.V, TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol ROVR and on the OTCQB under the symbol ROVMF. Joining us today is the company's CEO, Judson Culter, who will be going through Rover's current operations and upcoming milestones, including an overview of Rover's Phase 2 exploration results at their Cabin Gold project. At the end of the presentation, we will open it up for questions for management to address. If you are interested in asking a question and are logged into the Zoom app or web platform, you can submit your questions to us directly in the chat module. Please note, this presentation is being recorded today, Thursday, December 9th, and will soon be made available on the company's website at rovermetals.com. Today's call may contain forward-looking statements that are subject to risks and uncertainties that may cause actual results, performance, or developments to differ materially from those contained in the statements and are not guarantees of future performance of the company. No assurance can be given that any of the events anticipated by the forward-looking statements will occur, or if they do occur, what benefits the company will obtain from them. Also, some risks and uncertainties may be out of the control of the company. Rover Metals has a full disclaimer located in the back of their presentation. Lastly, RBMG is not a registered investment advisor or broker-dealer. For more information, please visit rbmilestone.com. And now I'll hand it off to Judson. Judson, the stage is yours.
Thank you, David. Let's just jump right in. And for all our viewers and listeners, we're going to be talking about our Phase 2 drilling at our Cabin Gold project. So our project is located in the beautiful north of Canada, land of the Northern Lights in Yellowknife. That's the 60th parallel. We do own 4 gold assets in the Yellowknife area, and the focus of today's presentation is our core signature asset, which is the Cabin Gold property, which is a high-grade gold iron formation hosted type of geology. So without further ado, let's just jump into the next slide. Okay, so a little bit about the company. We own 100% of 4 gold projects located in the Northwest Territories of Canada. The Northwest Territories remains an elephant discovery jurisdiction in the country. There just hasn't been, it just hasn't been overexplored or mined out. It's a jurisdiction that's really a frontier that remains in both Canada and the U.S. for big discoveries, which is, really what a lot of the producers are looking for. And so we've tailored our investment hypothesis and company growth, regarding a big discovery. So getting into, why is this an elephant-sized discovery jurisdiction? Well, within 130 square kilometers of our project, there's about 7.2 million ounces of gold that are sitting in resource categories in our competitors. So I'll just, I can name a few other companies that are around us: Fortune Minerals, Nighthawk Gold, Gold Terra. These companies have got multi-million ounce gold deposits, which, will become future mines. So there is a bit of an advantage to a small company like Rover in terms of being 5 to 10 years behind. And I'm going to get to that at the end of the presentation. So as we get into the slides, you can see that we have the makings of a very high grade gold type of deposit. So a little bit of background here on the management team and board. We do have a history of miners that have put projects into production, and that's at the senior level. So if you look down at the bottom of the slide, our advisory board and our directors, there's some major companies here that are either currently still producing, for example, Kinross, or companies that were junior miners, for example, Arizona Mining, that was sold for $1 billion in cash to South 32 Mining. So if a company like Rover today has got a $10 million market cap, that's just the space that we're in terms of the discovery mineral space. The management team itself, this is my third mining company as the co-founder. My prior two mining companies were Dolly Varden Silver, where there's close to 100 million ounces of silver now today. When that project started, there was 500,000 ounces of silver. Another company to talk about, Aries Mining, that is a producing forest bar mine in acid spar in the state of Utah. Going down the list, Keith Minty, our president, he put North American Palladium into production, is currently on the board of directors at Gold Mountain, which is a producing miner in southern British Columbia in Canada. Our CFO is Inca One, which is a producer down in Peru. And our head of exploration, Dave White, who's also the president of Aurora Geosciences based in Yellowknife, which is, in the day-to-day access to our projects with his team of geologists. Skipping ahead to the next slide. So here's an area map. If you're looking at the Northwest Territories, the largest city is a city called Yellowknife. And that was, funnily enough, Yellowknife sort of refers to gold because historically the Giant Mine and the Con Mine, which is what saw growth in the city of Yellowknife, is all related to gold mining. So no different today. We've got, if you're looking at the area map of junior miners, we've got several: Gold Mining Inc., 60 North, Gold Terra, Nighthawk Gold, Fortune Minerals, and of course Rover Metals. So infrastructure-wise, we're about 140 kilometers by road from the city of Yellowknife. So that gives us access to skilled labor in the mining sector. Also, the Snare Hydro Dam is just within kilometers of our project. So we do have access to green energy for this project. And we're right off of the major highway, which is Highway NT3. So a little bit more about geology now that we've talked about infrastructure. This is an iron formation hosted gold project. A similar comparable would be the Lupin Gold Mine or the Homestake Gold Mine in South Dakota in the United States. This project, since the 1980s, the Cabin Gold Project, has had $10 million Canadian invested into it since the 1980s. So it's very quickly becoming a later stage, what we call brownfields exploration project. Moving ahead in terms of talking about the historical resource at this project. So when we acquired it, it came with a historical resource of about 85,000 ounces of gold. That resource is spread across several historical targets. In 2020, we made a major discovery at the historical Arrow Zone, and we were able to both confirm the resource of 30,000 ounces there, as well as increase that resource and increase the average grade. So the Arrow Zone roughly is sitting at about 40,000 ounces at 8 grams per ton, and that's in the southeast quadrant of this property. The property itself is about 1,000 hectares, so it's a good size. Fast forwarding to the work we've done over the last 6 months. This summer, we commenced a drill program of roughly 2,500 meters, and we focused on the historic Beaver Zone as well as the historic Andrew North and Andrew South targets. On Tuesday of this week, I'm pleased to report that we did press release the results from the Beaver area, and that was successfully infill drilled, and there was only about 3 or 4 holes historically. So we successfully infilled the northern boundary of that the mineralization and connecting it up to the southern boundary. And so we've delineated that now as a zone that is open at depth and potentially open both at to the northwest at depth and to the southeast. The Arrow Zone is about 400 meters southeast, and we believe that these two zones are connected and they both extend out underneath Cabin Lake. So that Cabin Lake is frozen. It's cold up north, and so we've had boots on the ground out over the ice with IP lines starting November 28th. And so we're currently modeling a three-dimensional, modeling of the mineralization at both Beaver and Arrow to target our February 2022 drilling. And we're also building the drill pads out on the ice, needed to support the drill as we commence drilling in Q1 of next year. So when I talk about this project being high grade, to touch on the results from 2020, we had the 11th best drill hole of any junior miner in Canada in 2020 with a 32-meter, 14 gram per ton intersect that really defined that ore shoot and that zone at Arrow. As a follow-on, this week we announced that the Beaver zone has a 6.5-meter intersect of 5 grams per ton, including 3 meters at 7.5 grams per ton, and multiple other economic intersects. Our economic grade cutoff is 0.5 gram per ton for gold. So what we have here is another discovery as announced on Tuesday, roughly 90 meters in near surface strike length at Beaver. In the Arrow zone, of course, to the south is about 120 meters. We'll be announcing in January the discovery results at Andrew North and Andrew South, which is in the northeast quadrant of the property. But right now I can sort of, report that it's about 800 meters of strike length at Andrew. So that's about 4 times as much as we have here down in the south part of the project. So lots of cool stuff still to come in terms of reporting on our Q3 drilling. And that will be the focus of, future presentations and news releases, of course. So I'm just going to recap some of the high grade on this project. So we talked about the 32 meters of 14 grams per ton. We also have 8 meters of 16 grams per ton. And this is going to be the spot here. If you're looking at the Arrow zone slide, this is our first primary target for drilling below 75 meters in February. So that's where we're going to talk about a little bit on key takeaways at the end of the presentation. And I think 2022, which is poised as a year for growth for our company, is, we've spent $3 million in exploration in the last 3 years. And the best drill targets and the most, accurate, if you will, in terms of our confidence level and the big data that we now have on the project, that's all coming to play here as we start to drill in February. So here's an area map of this iron formation that we're working on to delineate our resource. You can see here that it's roughly over 15 kilometers in surface length. These iron formations do twist and fold below surface, and these are underground mines. The discoveries we've made to date are all near surface, starting within, a true depth of about 15 meters from surface. Again, just to recap on the Arrow and Beaver zone, Beaver, we also drilled this summer, 6 meter of 2 grams per ton, 6 meters of 3.5 grams per ton, and 5 meters of 3 grams per ton. And down in the Arrow, I've sort of touched on that already, but you can see here in the map that the mineralization trends northwest out underneath this lake. So that is where we are focused, and we're already prepping the program for February out over the ice. Let's talk about some other discoveries that have come out of this summer's program. So starting in October, we tested some IP work, which is resistivity, with you run IP lines across the ground. And what we were able to determine is that what we're hunting for is high sulfides and high chargeability with the IP. It does work on our project, which is the great news, because IP is much more economic than drilling. So with that IP work, we made a new discovery of an untested zone that is located between Beaver and Andrew to the northeast. And that IP target is about 100 meters in length. So that will be, focus of future drilling for sure. And that was never drilled or discovered historically. So we're continuing to open up the mine life potential of this project. We're obviously trying to get to 1 million ounces in the next few years. And these new IP anomalies that were never tested is, really exciting news. And so there's another discovery that we made on the IP, which is, if you look there on the primary iron formation north of Beaver, in the historic camp zone there, and that's never been drilled either. So let's just jump ahead to the next slide. I want to talk about some milestones. So we've just released, I'd say 50% of our phase 2 drill results on the resource expansion at Cabin Gold. What you can expect to see in the coming weeks is the Andrew zone, which I talked about as being 4 times as much surface strike length. What we found is the results, the samples that we'd sent in for Andrew, the grades, the economic grades ran right to the end of the sample. So at the cutoff of the drill core, it was still 1 gram per ton. So what we've had to do is send the shoulders in. And so we've cut and sent more samples in, as we believe the mineralized intervals at Andrew are even longer than what we're currently seeing. So looking ahead to Q1 2022, we are going to finance winter drilling. Treasury today is healthy. It's about $700,000 in the bank. So we'll be looking to finance about 800 to $1 million in Q1. The ice that we're building at Cabin Lake for the drilling, that ice is strong right until April. So we expect to be financing at higher share prices than we are at today. In Canada, we're seeing what's called tax loss selling in the market. So we're about 40 to 50% off of, our VWAP for the majority of 2021. So we expect that to recover. If you look at our stock chart history, every January, we're back up like 100% over where we traded in December. So those are more financeable stock prices is what I'm getting at. So we will finance about $1 million Canadian in Q1, probably in the February, March timeframe. Q1 will see drilling of our highest grade, most delineated zones at depth below 75 meters. And that will be the Arrow and Beaver zones. And if we're lucky, we'll be able to try some of the new IP anomalies as well. And then our H1 2022 goal is to bring a resource to market by the end of H1 in the form of a 43-101. And that will really get us the valuation per ounce in terms of, reflecting onto our share price that we need. Because right now we're just undervalued by virtue of the fact that we have never disclosed a gold resource on our projects. So those are our milestones. This is a slide that highlights just how good this project stacks up to other Canadian junior miners. There's roughly 2,000 junior miners, not just in the precious metal space, but there's 2,000 junior miners that are publicly traded across both the Venture Exchange and the CSE, the Canadian Stock Exchange. So we had in 2020, this is based on data provided by Haywood Securities, we had the 11th best drill program in the country. So that just speaks to the merit of this project as well in terms of comparables. Some key takeaways here that I'd like before I get into some of our appendices in this presentation is that in Q2 of 2021, this year, we got independent research coverage by Fundamental Research. And based on the results of 2020 drilling, they looked at our project and our grade, again, we 40,000 ounces at roughly 8 grams per ton, and they gave us a valuation of 18 cents Canadian per common share. Of course, there's a link here on the presentation on that Adobe link there. You can take a look. We're considerably undervalued. I think a rule of thumb for our resources, they used $125 US per ounce in ground. We're not seeing that at the moment, but we're not raising money either, so that's okay. Gold price forecast for next year. I think the easing of gold is starting to happen. I think the fundamentals of a $2,000 an ounce gold price forecast for 2022. I think that's hopefully where we're headed. Even if we're just stabilizing in 1,800, that's a great gold price and economic, especially for where we're working. Gold resource disclosure is a key takeaway. Again, we're looking to bring our maiden resource as a mining company to the market in 2022. Some share metrics and our share price trading history here. So right now we are at our 52-week bottom, but that's really because this is the time of year where we have our tax loss selling. So I think we'll move into the new year and should see a good recovery in January. Number of shares outstanding, 117 million. I think one thing, if we're talking about cap structure here, one thing and just trading history, one thing I'd like to talk about is our volume. So our average volume is about 220,000 shares a day. And if you look at our average share price over the last 52 weeks, that liquidity is about $4.5 million Canadian of liquidity and trading per year. And that's one thing we do really well at Rover Metals. And so the total amount of money that we raised by private placements this year was $3.5 million. So the liquidity exceeds our private placements by $1 million. And that's a key metric for a junior miner that relies on retail money. And that's a metric that we'll continue to hold into our raise in Q1 of next year. And I think in future, right now, if you're looking at the type of investor, the retail investor that will come into a private placement, they will typically take a common share and a warrant, sell their common share and hold the warrant. And, looking forward to 2022, I think Rover will be looking to attract a more institutional style investor, which actually does want to hold on to that common share, and because that's a voting share. So just in terms of share price and changing up our investment strategy for next year, I think that's also where some of the share appreciation is going to come from as we move to a different type of investor in 2022. Here's our disclaimer, just some forward-looking statements. You can review that when you get a copy of the presentation. Of course, to contact us and to view the presentation as well as the corporate, the deck itself, you can just go to rovermetals.com. And I'm going to jump into a few appendices here, just some operational updates in terms of, you don't get to see behind the scenes what management of a junior miner is up to per se, outside of its press releases. So in H1 of 2021, we increased our marketing budget threefold. We were able to get an ice road permit, which allowed us to connect to the major highway system and significantly reduce our winter exploration costs, so we don't have to use helicopters. We engaged our first time with a U.S. investor relations firm with ROVMF. We were able to kick off phase 2 drilling. We raised $3.5 million Canadian at 10 cents. That financing was oversubscribed in 48 hours. And again, that's just the smart money in retail mining understood the value of this high-grade project. We started setting the stage in 2021 for really just employing and giving back to the local First Nation community. So I'm happy to report that today we've surpassed over 4,000 hours of really local employment on our project. And what that does is we look down the pipeline for 2022 on institutional money. There's an incredible amount of goodwill, from a social economic perspective of this project in terms of it is a local employer. Okay, so where can we look in terms of H2 operational updates? So we completed our phase 2 drilling program. We were successful in the discovery of 2 new zones. Of course, the Andrew zone is still unreported. We were also, to date, we've been already getting started on the delineation of our phase 3 drill targets for February. So we're on track. I mean, minus a financing in February of next year, the drill will start turning, and we're looking forward to just continuing to add ounces for our investors. Just a brief sensitivity analysis. Let's talk about the resource on a historical basis that we do currently have, and what that would mean if we actually had analyst coverage giving us fair value per ounce if we did have a published resource. So today, we started this project, we've got this quadrant here of US $800 per ounce. That's fair to say. Let's stay in that column. We started this project with 85,000 ounces. Today, we're, in this 125,000 to 165,000 range. So that suggests a 25 cent to 44 cent, per share valuation. Of course, we haven't disclosed our resource yet, so we're not getting this. But I think investors that are listening in on our growth for 2022, this is where we're headed. So, I think fundamentals for this sector as well. There's been 2 big M&A transactions. One just today, with Kinross acquiring Great Bear in Ontario, and as well as, so they were bought out at $29 per share. And then, of course, the Pretium acquisition, I think it was announced last month. So there is M&A heating up. $29 per share is obviously a far cry from where Rover is today, but that's why we're in this, in this space, and these are the types of returns, if we're successful, that are possible. So that's it for the presentation. I'm just going to hand it back over to David, and we'll start taking some questions.
All right, thank you, Judson. If you are interested in asking a question and are logged into the Zoom app or web platform, you can submit your question to us directly in the chat module. We'll now take a moment to develop the queue, but in the meantime, we have a few questions that have been previously submitted. All right, Judson, you ready?
I am.
First question. I know you touched on it during the presentation, the forecast of gold price, but what is your impression about where gold will be going in 2022?
Well, there's been some macroeconomic talk, and there was an article published 2 days ago by Sprott that talked about a lot of the downward pressure on gold. And, whether that's manipulated at the banking level or not, point is that resistance is forecasted to come off in 2022. So, we're happy at $1,800 an ounce. I think most mining companies, their sustaining cost per ounce is $800. So this is still a great gold price. And, the fact that we were able to raise $3.5 million in June at, within 48 hours, that tells you that this is still a good gold price. But I think it's going to go even higher, and that's just going to generate more liquidity and interest in our sector. And it's another reason why 2022 is going to be our biggest year yet for growth.
Great. This is a good segue. So with gold, with your feeling about gold prices next year, how do you feel about junior miners' performance next year and the returns in 2022?
Well, that's a really interesting question, and I like to dissect it a few ways on my own personal opinions. I mean, I think one way to look at it is there was a huge uptake in financings into junior miners in H2 of 2020, as well as H1 of 2021. And we're all seeing that, people that are familiar with the space, is that the turnaround times at the labs have taken so long. And that's just because there's literally samples that are stacked into the parking lots because they're completely overwhelmed. And so to me, what that means is there is going to be some incredibly good deals for, brownfields projects and discoveries that are going to start next year. there's just going to be, you know, a lot of opportunities for the producers to look at. And I think that's great for the sector. I think that means there is going to be more M&A, and those are the returns that, you know, that brings people to the space. And you know, that, so I think it's poised for junior miners. You know, when companies like Great Bear are now being bought out, and as that continues, you know, for companies like Rover that can continue to grow to the next stage and the next level, you know, that's good for all junior miners.
Great. All right, we have one more question. You touched on it a moment ago, but why do you think 2022 will be such an outstanding year for growth at Rover Metals?
Well, this for us, that's company specific, and I think it's, you know, we're approached based on our 2020 results. That news release attracted a lot of eyeballs, including a couple producers. And I'm not going to say any names, but we did talk, and they did, you know, ask us what our phase 2 program looked like. And they really wanted us to see us open up, you know, a lot of data, both on a geophysics and a drilling perspective, to see this 15 kilometers of iron formation, you know, how much potential is there. And I think what we've been able to deliver, and very fortunately, because, you know, with logistics and supply and demand, with there being so much work in this sector, we were able to get, you know, the LiDAR airborne surveys. We were able to get the regional airborne mag work and the drilling. We were able to get all that done. So we actually have a huge data set, not just on Cabin Gold, but on a regional basis. We were able to make the discovery of a new iron formation that extends the Sleeman Gold project. And we also took some ground samplings on that. And so factor all that in, we've got $3 million of big data now on this project. It's also socioeconomically, it's in Canada, safe jurisdiction, poised for ESG institutional money. And then on top of that, we're going to be bringing our first maiden resource as a company to market in 2022. So, you know, it just kind of separates us, I think, you know, a little bit from companies that are just getting started. You know, we're going to hit our stride as, you know, it's just going to be a good growth year for us in 2022.
Terrific. All right. Thank you, Judson. And thanks everyone for joining today's webinar. Today's webinar recording will soon be made available on the Rover Metals website at rovermetals.com. If you have any additional questions that have not been addressed on this webinar, please feel free to email us at rover@rbmilestone.com. Again, that's rover@rbmilestone.com. Thanks again, and you are now free to disconnect.